Now we're live. All right. Are we ready? Here we go. From the industrial wastelands of Michigan to the fruited plains of Iowa, this is the American Greed Factor.
Why will they do it cheer perversity?
You are the dead. Remain exactly where you are. Make no move until you are ordered.
We burn them to ashes and then burn the ashes. That's our official motto.
Now we can see you. Clasp your hands behind your heads. Stand out in the middle of the room. Stand back to back.
Who can explain the fascination of fire? What draws us to it, whether we're young or old?
Here comes a candle to light you to bed. Here comes a chopper to chop off your head.
And welcome to the American Greed Factory podcast. This is Nathan. And tonight we're going to have just kind of a wild impromptu podcast. What happens? They say that shit a lot. Nothing happens, or it gets really high. So anyway, we have an exciting show for everyone tonight. Hang on. Something awful happened in London. You heard about that? Yeah, the Grenfell Tower fire. That is the most deadly fire in London in 100 years. And I've heard, the last number I heard was 79, but they say it might be going higher because they just don't know how much, how many people died, how many people were in there or whatever. But this is a problem. It's one of those weird, like, failure mode analysis stories you read. It's because what they did was they've reclad, they're redoing all the buildings in London to make them look nice. And this was some kind of one of their public housing schemes they have over there. But they try to make their public housing stuff not look like it, it's from a war zone. So what they did was they reclad a lot of the buildings, and they put aluminum panels on the outside, and then they some of the adhesive they put on it was flammable, but then they put fire resistant stuff under that was supposed to stop the fire from spreading exactly the way it is. So you've put aluminum cladding on a building and basically created a chimney, use flammable material to put it on, and then put fire prevention cladding on it that was never tested in the real world. And so then this building has no sprinklers. Didn't really have an effective fire alarm system other than people calling 911, and one stairway to get out. And it's public. Yeah, and it's public housing. So people are always dicking with the wiring in there and everything else. So yeah, it was. These are mostly people from the Middle East, but no, these are people trying to. There's people that do that shit here too, where you'll see an extension cord ran from a tower pole into a house. Because people do the same shit. I don't know if that was I don't think they've even found the source of the fire yet. But it was that they know why it spread so rapidly and killed so many people. And the thing is, people have been screaming about these places for years. And they're not. A lot of their big public housing schemes were done in the 70s, and they're all buildings from that era, and they've all done this to them. So now, like, all those type of buildings are just death traps. So it's good to know that's that's the way things are going. Weirdly enough, we were ahead of the curve on this. That type of rehab and fire prevention stuff, we banned that here because we're like, we don't like to do things. Has we tested it yet? Do we know that this works? Well, no, but it looks good on paper. It's like, no. But also we have a tort system here that'll absolutely annihilate you if you kill a bunch of people. So we tend to let the market handle that instead of the government, because Britain's deregulated a bunch of stuff in the last 15 years. I guess this is one of the problems, but it's one of those things, whatever their bigger problems are, it's one of those things you read about. It's like, we can make the building look nice. It all sounds good on paper. When you see it, you're like, it looks nice. and then something happens and you're like, oh, this is catastrophic, this is horrible, but you wouldn't think it would be, because you just ask questions like, yeah, does it done fire safety tests on that? Oh yeah, yeah. It's got fire prevention coating on it. Yep, yeah, it does. Okay, well, what could go wrong? And you find out. Sometimes when the rubber meets the road, it goes wrong. But that's why they say the fire spread up. It spread not only um, vertically but horizontally, which it's like the worst. It's like you can have fires that spread, because they have high rise fires in New York and stuff. They spread up. So if they start on a low floor, it's a real problem. But if they go up high, you know what direction they're going to move. They're generally going to move up. They're not going to move up and out and up and out. That's when it gets to be, when you're actually vectoring the fire. That's when it becomes a problem. Yes, yeah, yeah. When it becomes something you can't control. Um, but then what else do we had a weird failure this week that hasn't been, no one's adequately explained yet why this happened, but they're investigating. Did you hear about that Navy ship got hit by a giant freighter? Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what was going. Well, the captain almost died because he was asleep. The captain of the Navy ship, I forget what it's called, but it's one of those Arleigh Burke destroyers that can like shoot down things that are flying at it. And it's like, what, they didn't notice this giant fucking freighter, um, or did they think it would move for them? I don't know. Do they not communicate? I don't know anything about the Navy or ships at sea, because maybe civilian ships don't communicate with Navy ships. I don't know. Yeah, I don't understand what was going on there, but it was horrible. Seven people basically, they had to seal off part of the ship and leave those guys to die, or the ship would sink. It's like that's terrifying. That's a horrible decision to have to make, and it seems like this was preventable, because I know, what was that ship? It's the coal, like, people just ran at it with explosives and killed 80 people, but that's not really widely preventable. Um, but this seems like a pretty preventable thing. I don't know though. I never know. I don't understand international shipping. It seems like crazy shit all the time. Submarine came out of the water and split a fishing boat in half, because they said the fishing boat was mainly made out of wood. They weren't getting a return, so they didn't think anything was there. Well, and then and always with the Japanese, and I don't want to just make this statement pejoratively, but I will. It seems like there's something that happens, and there's the truth, and it never seems to like lock together into a coherent story. So, because the Japanese either take great license with safety, or they just deny that there's a problem and keep going on. I don't know. Because the Japanese have had horrible nuclear accidents. Well, I mean, starting with Hiroshima and Nagasaki, those weren't accidents, but yeah, they've had a history of. I watched this whole thing on it, but it was talking about the history of nuclear power in Japan, to the recent Fukushima crisis. They've irradiated large swaths of Japan to really really high levels, and just like, well, okay, what happened? Because there's like an international regulatory commission, and they'll give them a report, and it's like, this doesn't seem like a, what were you doing? It's like, oh no, this is what happened. Don't ask any more questions. You're being rude. Yeah, Well, they meltdowns you would but they've had yeah, that's and technical. Yeah, I have a book of nothing but um what's there's one in Alabama that's had like 5 serious incidents all in the 90s. You haven't had one recently. 2001 they had one. But I know one of their solutions was water got underneath the containment somehow and it was irradiated at that point. So what they did was they put a basketball in there. And when it rises up to the drain points, the basketball gets sucked into the drain. So then they know to suck the irradiated water out and dispose of it. They never say how. But yeah, that's what's that I think that's Harper's Ferry or there's one. I don't know, there's one of those. It's a pretty big. It's got like multiple reactors on site, but yeah, we've done some silly shit, but we've never like they killed. I think in '99 they killed like 78 people at a, and I forget what the that's when Bobby Fischer was on his Statute of Limitations World Tour. He was staying in that city in Japan and that's when he went to Iceland. He said, "I want to get the fuck out of here because there's been a major nuclear accident here. No one's talking about it, but everyone's leaving. But I don't speak Japanese, so no one will clearly tell me what's going on." And that was the one where they had the fuel rod explosions, which that was always suspicious because the way it was explained to me is there's two kind of reactors. There's the nuclear fission reactors that make electricity, and then there's what they call fast breeder reactors, which you use to enrich nuclear fuel to make atomic bombs. But they're not the same type of reactor. But there is a dangerous conversion process you can use to try to make a regular reactor into a secret fast breeder reactor. And that's the only way this type of accident can happen. So either the Japanese were trying to make nuclear weapons clandestinely, which is well within their capability, or they were doing something else ridiculous and dangerous that just no one talks about. Oh no, they're probably trying to. They probably have a clandestine nuclear program because they hate. Uranium. Yeah, uranium and plutonium. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we developed. See, well, they called it the RBMK, which means Russian. But we developed that in the 50s because it's a cheap way to build a reactor too, because it doesn't require a lot of precision equipment. But the danger is it's water cooled but graphite moderated. So you have well, yeah, and they're gigantic and they don't have a because like no, no, they just put a lead shield on the top, a lead shield on the bottom, and a big thing of concrete around it. But it's super cheap. And if you didn't do the one thing that they did, they would never blow up. I mean, there's still like 10 of them running in Russia. They don't care. Uh, no, they shut them down finally because the site was it was just too controversial because the Ukrainians wanted a closer relationship with Europe than Russia at one time, and you can't be in the European Union and have an RBMK reactor operating. They're too dangerous. They don't accept them. But yeah, the fatal flaw with I mean, those type of reactors had a lot of problems. That's why we didn't build them. because we developed the technology to make those because they were a lot more efficient than the science experiments we were making, but they had that fatal flaw where it's like this thing can definitely melt down under these circumstances. I mean, any reactor can melt down if you fuck up. A lot of them didn't have, like our reactors, you can always, the least trained guy in the facility can press the big red button and it'll just pull the rods out and just flood it with or put the rod, whatever slows the reaction down. Neutron flux. Yeah. Yeah, it just melts down. Yeah. Yeah, well, like at Chernobyl, the one scientist explained it's like they created every element in the periodic table in 2 seconds. They released so much heat and so much energy so fast. But yeah, it was because the graphite moderated the reactor and the water cooled it, which is unusual. So we use both, and we can use boron too to freeze the reaction. Thing with graphite is when it gets so hot and you try to shove it back in there to do an emergency shutdown, then it becomes like a welding rod, and that just adds to the heat, and the steam will push the rods back out in that design because water doesn't compress. So yeah, the Chernobyl design was wonderful for making a lot of power, but when you're doing bizarre safety tests that, like, let's turn off all the safety features and create the worst possible thing we can because we're paranoid about the Americans nuking us. It's like, the status of your reactors is going to be the least of your problems. There'll be problems, but don't worry, there'll be plenty of isotopes floating around. You won't need to worry about those reactors. Yeah, there's I forget how much power those reactors can make, but I know it's like the megawatts. Yeah. Well, they governed them after Chernobyl to 750 because the most powerful one was in Lithuania at Ignalina, and they could make, I think, 1,100 megawatts. They could literally power like 12 Lithuanias with just yeah, and they always made them in groups of 2 and 4. And they'll still be viable till like 2050. That's when they say the concrete will break down at that point, and they'll have to decommission them. But they're cheap. They're not like our big Westinghouse reactors here, where it's like $1 billion every 5 years to run them. It's like, no, they can. And the Canadians are building reactors that can run off of our spent fuel rods now. Yeah, but the problem is they want to store the rods in the Great Lakes until they use them, and everyone's like, no, no, I don't think that's a good idea, Canada. Because we just had a big fight about that up here because they wanted to run them through Michigan and all these spent fuel rods and take them up to the big reactor. It's on Lake Michigan. What is it? The John Wood Power Center. I can't remember what it is, but yeah, we about that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, H2O2. It's easy to break off the second hydrogen molecule. At least that's what I read. Could be getting this all wrong. This is the science. Yeah. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But I know if they get too hot, bad things happen. Or if they're run for profit. Yeah, that was what was that place called? Yeah, it was in is that Stony Flats or because the security guard they found the other two guys dead. And they're like, "Where's the third guy? What happened to the third guy?" And then they look up. It's like, "Oh shit!" Uh, yeah, what was that? Idaho Falls, I think, is where that was. Yeah, because I remember there were weird stories about that. Like, one of the guys was screwing the other guy's wife, and they thought it was like some kind of fatal love triangle, and people just added things to it that weren't there. Yeah, yeah. So they're like, "What really happened? What was the secret at Idaho Falls?" Yeah. Well, then we had the really scary, the Chernobyl like place we have is that Hanford site out where they made the first nuclear weapons, and it's just like completely contaminated. Where is that at? They just had a fire there, and it was scary shit. I mean, like a couple weeks ago, because nobody. It's one of those things like nobody knows what to do with it. There's a website, hanfordsite.gov. Yeah, it's in Washington State. Yeah, it's a nuclear production complex on the Columbia River. That's nice. That'll poison like all kinds of groundwater. Um, they had 9 nuclear reactors there, fast breeder reactors, plutonium processing complex, and made about enough nuclear material for 60,000 weapons. Yeah, oh yeah. They have the most nuclear waste in any one site in the world. 2/3 of our nuclear waste stored there. Yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, this is one of the things that like this was part of the Manhattan Project. It's been around a long time. Because now we make everything at there's a place in Texas. It's called Panex. They make all the it's that and Rocky Flats or something else. This place is basically decommissioned, but it had so much nuclear shit at one time. That's like anything that goes on there is a disaster. But it's again we're not poisoning the air and not being detected in other countries, and we're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's scary shit. It's our Black Mesa. What? Oh yeah, yeah, and a few of them under well, the ones that we didn't recover with spy submarines and or spy. Oh, is the water dissipates it, or is it the water and the pressure and the salinity of the water that does it? Well, after the fall of the Soviet Union, the Russians just took a bunch of their nuclear submarines they knew they couldn't afford to dispose of. They just took them out to the Pacific and just scuttled them, let them sink to the bottom. There's a place there you can't even fish anymore. It's just like 7 or 8 nuclear submarines sitting at the bottom of the. Because the what's that? The National Oceanographic Institute lost one of their. It looked like a lawnmower with propellers on it, but it had a big tether, and what it did was it went under the water, and they did oceanographic studies, whatever that is, and they this green glow, and they were like, "What is that? A new form of coral?" And they sent their probe down there, and they were like, "I can't believe what we're seeing." And yeah, the Navy called them and was like, "Cut the probe loose. We'll get you another one." That thing's so radioactive now. If you brought it up, everyone on the ship would be dead by the time back to California. And they're like, "What happened?" It's like, that's where the Russians scuttled all their decommissioned nuclear submarines. They just pulled the plugs and bailed out. And that's a true story. When I first read that, I was like, "That I got to Snopes that. That sounds crazy." It's like, oh, it's true. Yeah. Yeah, the ocean with the water was your radiation shield. Well, I guess it works good because that's what they do on the ISS when they get to when they predict a bunch of radiations coming. All the astronauts go hide behind the water cistern. So I guess it's effective in some way. Some of those gamma rays move. I don't know. It stops it, so that's good. Yeah, so it doesn't like bounce through your body and what does gamma radiation do to your body? It does something to your cells and your DNA. Yeah. Well, yeah, it makes your cells burst, but it will also do something to your DNA where it'll knock something out and it'll become cancer. I don't know. Oh, neutron bombs. Yeah, yeah. Neutron bombs. Yeah, they were called enhanced radiation weapons. Only us, the Israelis, and the Chinese ever effectively developed one because it takes a huge amount of fissile material and it's extremely low yield. So, like, basically, the amount of material you packed into the Tsar bomb, like, that's the kind of material you need to make an effective neutron bomb, and you get 1/10 of the yield. And also spraying radiation around like that is like there's always unintended consequences. But they're horribly expensive, and they couldn't. There was a reason. It's why they didn't make the cobalt bombs either. I think they fucked up the electronics because they still have problems to this day where the nuclear bombs will screw up the electronics because the radiation they emit will fuck up. Because I think that was the problem they had during the Manhattan Project was the radiation from the pit, the core would actually they didn't know if it would fire right. That's why the guy had to assemble the bomb in the air right before they dropped it on Hiroshima. He had to go in there and put these plugs in. But when you look at those, it was. Have you ever heard about the guy who was the truck driver that made an exact replica of the little boy bomb? Yeah, he went through the internet, scoured the internet, found all the pictures, all the blueprints and schematics you could find. They never publish them all, but they publish enough of them. And he just rolled it out of his garage. It was on this big. He actually made the thing that looked like the original carrier they stuck it in the Enola Gay with, and he rolled it out and it was painted and it looked exactly like Little Boy. And if you opened it up, it looked exactly like Little Boy looked inside. They replicated it. It took him like 15 years. But of course, it didn't have any explosive material, nuclear material in it. But it just looks like that. You knew right away as soon as him and his son pushed it out of the garage. It's like, oh, I know what that is. But it took him a long time, and he got visited a few times by. It's like, what exactly are you doing? Because you go to a machine shop and it's like, can you make me a piece of metal like this long, and it's got to look like this, and they were showing these guys blueprints, and yeah, eventually somebody called the government. It's like, what are you doing? And then they found out and they were like, that's kind of cool. We don't really have a good replica of this because we blew ours up, but yeah. Oh yeah, the government want to know like who gave you the specs for our bombers, and yeah, it's like a school book for kids. There's a lot of stuff like that that got out. I mean, that's well. I remember when the stealth fighter when I was in middle school. The stealth bomber and the stealth fighter were like we knew they existed, but they were supposed to be secret. What they looked like and everything. It's like we have invisible aircraft, and then I forget if it was Revell or Monogram models, like came out with the models of the B2 and the stealth bomber. Like there were several different versions that came out, but I think it was Revell had like accurate ones. I remember it was like, where the fuck did you get these? Like, oh, there's just guys that sit at the end of the runways and take pictures of this shit. We just kind of guessed what we're a modeling company, so we guessed to scale what it would look like because they made a model that looked exactly like the F-117, the Nighthawk. The B-2 they never really got right, but the fighter, the little fighter bomber, they pretty much made that right. And they were pissed. They're like, this is a secret. We've spent billions of dollars developing this, and you jackasses just basically make a model that looks exactly like it. How did you do it? It's like, yeah, people take pictures of shit. People like to if you tell someone a secret, the first thing they're going to do is tell somebody else. They're not going to keep it a secret for very long. Everyone likes to brag and feel important. No, but well, it wasn't just those guys. They talked to people because engineers, for them, it's just like, we solved this problem. Let me tell you how. Let me show you how smart I am. And they also killed a lot of people building them because that shit was like pure cancer. The materials they were working with. Yeah, well, the B2s had all kinds of problems initially. Like they couldn't get wet because they went from being radar absorbing to super radar reflective if they got wet. Well, wait a minute, this isn't good. I mean, there's a reason they don't build that. They're coming out with a new generation now, but there's a reason that like where's the Russian stealth bomber? Where's the Russian or the Chinese stealth planes? And it's like nobody else has that shit because it's horribly expensive and it doesn't yield. If you can build 5,000 fighters for one, it's kind of like the Sherman tank versus the King Tiger. Like, yeah, the Sherman's not as good as the Tiger, but when you build 30,000 of them and you only have 500 Tigers, who's going to win? Just going to overwhelm you with numbers. Which that's always fun. That Cold War stuff's fun. Oh, really? Yes, he was saying that it was the closest thing to the 2001 Space Odyssey. Okay. I could see that. Yeah, it could be. Or could demand a lot of, or it's like 10% of people. Yeah. Sit down, relax, recline your seat. Special effects are in your mind, says they were in the book. Yeah, it could be. It could be that good. I know. Yeah, that was a good movie. I might like that. My favorite part of that series though was Authority. I want someone to make that. Because everyone said, well, we don't know if we'll get any further than Annihilation. Like a lot of people are saying that. Do you hear what the guy who directed Blade Runner said? Yeah. I've already accepted failure. Is this going to measure up? I don't know. It'll be its own thing. Yeah, so that could be. Well, it's funny that Blade Runner kicked Annihilation off to 2018 because they said because they did. I don't know. Somebody was it the author? Was it Vandermeer? Somebody said that they were so similar. It's like we can't have two movies like this coming out at the same time. It's kind of dark, moody, atmosphere movies. It's like we can't do two of those right on top of one another. Well, yeah, the one that like basically established and defined science fiction for the next 50 years. I don't know though. The Southern Reach trilogy was really that is a groundbreaking series of books. I can't sing the virtues of that enough to people, even though I'm not a crazed environmentalist and don't think the world's going to end in 2 years or something. But I there's something about those books that I like, and I know I'm too stupid to be on anyone's website or comment, but I did enjoy those books a lot. I don't know why. I don't know what it is about them. They're almost a throwback to kind of X Files type stuff, but much grittier and darker. Yeah. Well, and the characters are really good. Yeah, I think what I liked the most about the Southern Reach were the characters, because these were people that they were believable, flawed people. Because everyone thought they were the grand master. It's like, I know what's going on. It's like, no, nobody knows what the fuck's going on. And I like it that the book didn't really clear it up at the end. It's like, uh, he was, they were smart enough not to try to do that. So yeah, we'll see. I'll look forward to both. Um, in the twilight years of my life, I'm glad that all the stuff I like is coming back for one last. I didn't realize how much Harrison Ford was in the new Blade Runner until the one scene. Yeah. I don't know where it's going though. Like, what's the secret? Oh, everyone's a replicant. We're doing that now. Where are we going with this? Ryan Gosling. Is Jared Leto the new Eldon Terrell, or is he a descendant of Eldon Terrell? Is he blind? Yeah, it seemed weird. Perfect role for him, but kind of a weird looking Klingon almost looking guy who's blind. But yeah, there was not enough's been revealed to really tell anything. So, and well, that's good. It's good news. We'll see what happens. A movie to look forward to finally. Blade Runner is October of this year. Annihilation is TBA 2018. So you just need to make the environment look familiar yet kind of, what did they say? Kind of warped around the edges. Yeah, that's what you need to do with and for a movie, I just reread those recently. For a movie, I you can compress a lot of that stuff. Like, you can make the psychologist slash director a lot more compelling. You can make the biologist is just a blank slate, and even blanker as the story goes on. But yeah, you can kind of you can compress a lot of ideas into a movie and make them visually appealing. I mean, I right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the cool thing with because I'm not he's even more like that. It's like, yeah, everyone thinks a different thing and it's described from their point of view, but in the end you find out, oh, not only was everyone wrong and full of shit, but they were really wrong. So we'll see. Look forward to it. There'll be some excitement in my life. Yeah, is that? Yeah, isn't that the third time around for that, or the second time around? They did a movie, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, sort of. Oh, yeah. That's interesting. Black and white has an interesting aesthetic to it. Sometimes it's fun to watch. Sometimes it really works. And sometimes, yeah, 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 yeah. I don't really know. For me, I think black and white works great for dialogue movies. Um, and like ominous things. Like black and white's great for like an ominous what's gonna happen. Um, but yeah, I don't know how much for action that would work. Yeah, could can't blend it that well. I don't know. I mean, the Twilight Zone always worked in black and white. That's all they had, but it was definitely it looked good. Um, right. Mhm. Yeah. Huh. Right. Yeah. I remember Michael Mann talked a lot about that in Collateral. He was like, "Oh yeah, you could never do this shot in film," because it was actually the L.A. skyline, and you could see like because they were shooting above the buildings from where they were at, and it looked like towers of light coming up just from the ambient light from the buildings, and you would have never got that on film, which I didn't know, but. Yeah. Yeah, you just have to get it out of people's heads because nowadays everything black and white is old. Like, it's Citizen Kane. It's the first 20 minutes of Wizard of Oz. That's black and white. Twilight Zone. Yeah, just an ejaculation of filmmaking. God, I hated that movie. Yeah, I didn't like that movie at all. I don't know why. I should have. It had all the elements. It's like I should like this, but I didn't. Yeah, it almost seems like too much of that. Like there was a great script and story there, I felt, but it's like, it just got lost in the weirdness of Oliver Stone. It's like he just went over the top, and I didn't. Yeah, we're gonna super edit this movie. We're gonna edit every second. Oh, speaking of Oliver Stone, have you watched the Putin interviews yet? Yeah, I watched about half of them because it's basically Oliver Stone speaking English and Putin speaking Russian, and it's all subtitled, and you got to watch it like really close because there's like Putin will say stuff and kind of move his head and sort of look at the camera in a way, and it's effective, it's interesting, but you really got to really watch it very closely, which I found to be sort of tedious because I would just like to hear it in English and then just not stare at it the whole time. Because I don't mind subtitled movies sometimes, but this gets weird because half of it's in English and then half of it's in Russian. Castro, yeah, Castro one was interesting too. This one was more. I don't know if he's because he seems to be like a champion for Putin. Is like, the Russians aren't so bad. That seems to be like the thesis he's using here, but they don't come across that way in this series. And then Putin was showing. Did you hear about he showed pictures to Oliver Stone or video of like this is us fighting ISIS, and people analyzed that section. It was like that's Americans bombing ISIS in Syria. Or no, those are Americans fighting the Taliban in Afghanistan because they had Roman numerals on the tanks and missiles and stuff. It's like those are Americans. That's not. It was like such a bad thing. It's almost like the Russians were fucking with them because they would know. I mean, they're not stupid. They know people are going to look at it and be like, "What the hell?" That's the thing with the Russians. They'll just do things. The one with Brad Pitt on Netflix? No, I haven't. I've heard weird things about it. Like I've heard it's like this is a journey into the naivete of Americans who think they're going to change things in Afghanistan, or I've heard it's just a bad movie. So I don't know what to believe. What do you think? Yeah. Uh huh. Yeah, you can't fight a civilian population because they're just constantly going to come at you, and then they're going to go eat biscuits and gravy.
There's like the best scene in the movie, like when he's giving a speech to this German press meeting. And this lady pops out and is like, "Oh man, they found something that looks a lot like Kelly Slim." Like, look at the credits. Oh, that was just Kelly Slim.
Oh,
For some reason, the way she was like made up, she looked like an off-brand Kelly Slim.
poor man's Tilda Swinton, German Tilda Swinton.
Anyways, it's like the best scene in the movie because he's explaining the map and surgeons. And he's like, all right, we have 6 insurgents. We kill 2 of them. We have 4 insurgents. Right? 6 minus 2 equals 4. Wrong. 6 minus 2 equals 20. And he goes and explains like, hey, those 2 guys you killed, they have like 6 friends and families who are on the edge of becoming like running this insurgency, and you just killed them and you just pushed them into this insurgency.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this guy understands like how crazy this shit is. But like most of the movie just like doesn't really like come away with this like anti-war message. They have to force it in with the narration. Because really, like the movie's just about this guy who had the audacity to want to do his job.
Yeah.
And then he wasn't going to be able to do it. Because it's like they want to provide security for Afghanistan, but they have to do it with essentially no troops whatsoever.
Yeah.
So you're basically asking them to do impossible. And then like Obama looks like an asshole. He's like, this is the #1 guy in Afghanistan. Now they just talk to him.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, that does. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. They always resented those wars because they inherited them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a weird movie because it feels like it wants to give this anti-war message. Like actual characters they want to display as being crazy, naive, like are actually kind of like, they're not that crazy and naive. Like they understand the crazy and nasty. They just don't have any. They don't have any support. It's almost impossible. Never impossible happen.
Yeah, it's not. It's almost comes across as a sympathetic appraisal of, instead of look at how crazy and stupid this war is, it's like, oh, look how smart the people are that are trying to fight this crazy and stupid war. They know it's crazy and stupid, but yet they're still going to go do it. Yeah, that's I could see that.
My character that Brad Pitt plays fun.
Yeah.
The guy gets up every day and he has like 1 meal a day and he runs like 14 miles.
Was this the guy based on Stanley McChrystal? Because that's Stanley McChrystal shit there. But yeah, because he's the guy who got rid of all the Burger Kings and then all the fast food over there. He's like, I don't want my soldiers to be fat. And yeah, so this is Stanley McChrystal. Because did the movie show how it ended for him? Because they were talking shit about Obama and his people, and they fired him. Because that's what happened to Stanley McChrystal.
I think I came across at some point the ultimate is to have this big mission where everybody told them, like British intelligence, like basically told them like where they should avoid at all costs, and like it was like, all right, we're gonna send troops in there because they're trying to get some troops.
Yeah.
And they send all the people in, and then like nothing happens. And they like a big firefight. They don't provide. They end up not providing food and people after that fire.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a great book that it kind of encapsulates all those wars. It's called Daydream Believers. It's called the Myth of American Power is the subtitle. And it there's a lot of things in there. It's not just political. That's part of it because it's written by 2 New York Times guys. But there's also like a lot of like cost breakdown charts where it's like, this is what it would cost us to occupy these countries effectively. And it kind of uses the Marshall Plan as its thesis. Like if we were going to destroy Afghanistan and Iraq and rebuild them. This is what it would cost in money, manpower, and troops. And you would essentially need a constant draft, which would end whatever political party instituted it forever. Whether the Democrats or the Republicans instituted it, that party would not exist in politics anymore. And it would cost, it would be like $7.5 trillion. It was some insane amount of money. And it's like, if you don't do these things, and they got all this information from the Pentagon, is like what it would take to destroy and rebuild these countries, which we're nowhere close to that. And it pretty much describes why, any force other than nuclear weapons you're just going to piss a bunch of people off, dig some wells, hand them some MREs, and they're going to fucking hate you for 100 years. and that's it. So I always refer back to that book. There's a lot of interesting information in there about, it's like, we're not really losing wars. We're just giving people impossible tasks. And, everyone wants to support the people fighting the wars, but nobody wants to put their family on the line or their children. And it's like, yeah, that's absolutely. So it's kind of it's a weird thing. That's why Iraq and Afghanistan have taught me, it's like, oh, we don't need to fight any more wars. We need to get out of this business because that is just cost too much money and too much heartache and too much suffering, and for no discernible. I mean, if gas was 50 cents a gallon, maybe I guess you could sarcastically say, well, it worked, but no, it's not. So yeah, I'll have to check that movie out. That sounds it sounds along the lines of a lot of things. Well, because Daydream Believers is a lot like Charlie Wilson's War, where there's a lot of cost breakdown and idea analysis in the middle of it without the colorful characters. But it is a lot of like, this is why this costs so much. This is why it costs this much to fight a war. This is why a modern mechanized army consumes like $4.5 billion a month of just one fucking thing: gas, bullets, whatever. It's like, when you break down the cost, you're like, oh my God, this is insane. We could have the best schools in the world for this kind of money. But it also discusses why is America all over the world? We're the only people left doing it because we are the last empire where we just have bases. Because another thing this book breaks down is all the basing arrangements we have all over the world. It's like, nobody fucking does that anymore. Nobody can afford it. And nobody would want, like, the Chinese don't have KFC and McDonald's, so nobody wants a Chinese military garrison in Estonia or something. Like, there's no incentive.
Yeah, because a military base in the country doesn't necessarily mean like they're taking over. It's like, hey, the Americans have lots of money. Here's a bunch of people that forward and get paid to like make sure that we're not blowing each other up.
Yeah, and they're not exactly belligerent yet. I mean, they always could be, but they're not doing it right now, and we like their TV shows and their movies, so yeah, let them in. But that's because we have a culture to export too. Again, that's why when people talk about, oh, America's fucked, and I can see a lot of reasons why we are heading down that road, but I don't see, like in New York, I don't see people jumping on ships going over no, you're not. No one's going anywhere. No, we still have a lot of viable things to export to the world. Yeah, and talk to anyone from overseas that's honest with you. They're here. It's like, they'll tell you everything they don't like about America, but when you ask them, it's like, well, why the fuck are you here then? If you hate this so much? Oh, no, I don't hate it. So you have great air conditioning and ice here. It's like, oh, okay. That's it, huh? But yeah, that's a fun topic. What else did I there's something else globally. Oh, yeah, an interesting podcast / article follow-up on why the Russians are such bad people. Not just in general, but the people that, well, it talks about there's a line from the fall of the Soviet Union to the present, and this is kind of where they were talking about, because the early days, like the halcyon days, like when they were rolling tanks into Red Square, and what was the guy's name? The first guy when Yeltsin was on the tank with the Russian flag is like that. Those were like the chaos days. Like nobody knows which way it's going. But then once Clinton became president, we kind of knew which direction this was going. We thought we could deal with these people, and it talks about how down the line, ever since the fall of the Soviet Union, the Russians have always tried to put us in some kind of subordinate position to them. They're always trying, even though it's bizarre, because even the CIA people that have to deal with them, because we had the non-proliferation was the big thing with Clinton. It's like, don't sell your fucking nukes and your VX gas to every swinging dick that comes along with a suitcase full of money. Please don't do this. It'll lead to something horrible. And the Russians lied to Clinton every chance they got. It's like, oh no, we'd never sell it. I mean, they ended up destroying a lot of that stuff, and the Russians have never, that we know of, sold a nuclear weapon to a terrorist organization. But that was Clinton's big thing. And then under Bush, they wanted to do all kinds of like counterterrorism stuff, because Bush was the counterterrorism president. And they talked about how the Russians fucked us on that. They lied to us, and basically everyone they hated was a terrorist, and we need to be suspicious of them. And they would tell the CIA this. It's like, oh, you got to hate these people. You got to hate those people. They're involved with Al Qaeda somehow. And the CIA is like, how the fuck are these people involved with Al Qaeda? Well, it's coming. We'll have information as soon as we can fabricate it. We'll let you know. And then Obama, his big thing was he wanted to like eliminate 75% of our nuclear arsenals, and he thought he could talk to the Russians, and it's like, why don't we get rid of this shit that's costing us billions of dollars a year to maintain? We're not obviously not using it. Why don't we pare it down to where we can only destroy the world once? Something like that. Oh yeah, we want to talk terms with you. And they just fucking lied to him. And then when they did finally sign a treaty, and because Obama did reduce arsenals on both sides by quite a bit, then the next week they invade, Ossetia and Georgia. It's like, oh, Jesus Christ, we can't trust fucking people at all. And then they were talking about how when Trump's people took over, they wanted to make all these overtures about, we can be friends, we can work together, let's work together on terrorism. We have a lot of enemies in common in the world. And essentially the Russians, they found out that they're fucking with our election. They're doing shit with our computers. It's like, oh, goddamn, we haven't been able to trust these people since fucking Stalin, and we never will. And because all the CIA guys say it's all they try to do is fuck us at every turn. They lie. They're trying to put us in some kind of junior position to them, even though their economy is like 10% the size of ours, and their whole country internally is a fucking mess. Their economy is not quite as bad as it was when the mob was running everything in the 90s in Russia, but it's getting close. Their GDP is about the same size, respectively, and these guys are all saying they're all putting up the red flags. Like the Russians are getting desperate. They're getting desperate because when oil prices are low, the Russians are fucked. And it was true when they were the Soviet Union, and it's true now. And but it just broke down everything. It's like, we thought the Russians were our friends until Putin came along. It's like, no. These people have always lied to us. They've always tried to mislead us, and they assume we're naive and stupid. And but we're so desperate to like, can we end this Russian thing? But it doesn't look like the Russian thing's ever going to end until there's either no more Russians or no more Americans. Then it will end. Because the Russians, what's the Russians saying? They have another great saying. It's like, those that are destined for the gallows will never be shot. They don't have to worry about being shot because they're going to be hung. So that's our Russian proverb of the week. So that was interesting, enlightening, and scary. But yeah, check out the Atlantic and the Atlantic podcast if you want to know more about that. It's kind of an interesting blow by blow by ex-CIA people about something. You can never fucking trust these assholes. But I don't think that comes as a big bolt of blue. Like, oh my God, really? I've never been able to trust those people. But they've always been in an extreme. We're always like they're like this claw reaching out of the darkness that's going to crush our democracy. It's like that they've always been at a massive disadvantage. I mean, they could if we have idiotic leadership, but who wants to talk about that? So we got some video games. Yeah, there was a Unknown Soldier. You wanted to describe that? Okay, yeah, something like that.
So there's a guy, and he's basically his family player on it. So he developed a mod. The game called H1Z1, which is like a zombie game,
Okay.
which is a spin-off of DayZ, which is a mod of Arma 3.
We're getting deep here.
Yeah. Anyways, it's called a battle royale game.
Okay.
It's more like a movie. So it's very similar to the H1Z1. It's called King of the Kill, which is a mod. He made this game called PlayerUnknown's Battleground. He's working with a company.
Mm-hmm.
It's like $30. It's an early access still. It's like $30 on Steam. It sold 4 million copies, so it's done very well for them.
It's not like No Man's Sky where they had to refund half of those.
No.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so the game starts out. The sort of lobby. You just load in. There's a bunch of guns on the picture table. You can pick them up and try to use them. And
It's like every day of my life.
if you have voice chat turned on, you're subject to the most racist and hateful things in the entire world.
Oh no, really?
So just turn that off.
Yeah.
And then you so when the match starts, there's 100 of you playing, and at some point you're able to parachute out of the plane. Then you gotta land on the ground. It's like a really big island, and you have nothing. So you have to run around and go in houses and find players.
Oh, okay.
So you just you have like handguns, rifles, stuff like that. Crowd, prone. Gotta find different optics. Find an ACOG, and you really want like either like 4 times or 8 times scope. That's your best stuff.
Yeah.
Shoot people at a distance. And like the holographic scopes are like they're good for close range stuff, but like you never want to be a close range.
That doesn't sound fun.
Um,
Unless they have slingshots and you have a shotgun.
there's a crossbow brigade, which is almost useless. The reload time on it is horrendous. But it's totally silent. So like if you're like hiding somewhere, like you can shoot like a whole quiver of arrows at somebody and they'll never know where the fuck you are.
Oh, okay.
Actually, anytime it doesn't really matter what you're shooting, you're not really gonna know what anybody's shooting from unless you have like surround sound headphones.
Oh, okay. So you can tell.
Yeah, because otherwise it's like modern games, all stuff they have. They'll do like a little like do vignetting with like blood all on the direction that you're being shot from.
Uh-huh.
That's what a lot of video games do.
Right.
This alien does none of that. So if
Oh.
you're getting shot, the only thing you can tell where you're getting shot from is the noise. And you know, like people can open up at you at a pretty far distance. The only thing you can tell where they're shooting from is trying to look for flash. Sometimes you can't even see that because you put flash visors on the weapons, and so it's only sound. And the guy is like crouching in like grass. You'll never know where you're getting shot from. Also, like when you die, there's no like kill cam to see like, hey, how the guy shot you. And you also have no camera kill when you die. You just immediately you have no access to any information once you die. That's it.
Huh.
So it's very like frustrating game, but very tense. So like when things work well, it's very, very rewarding. When things don't work, it's good. Also, like the thing that happens. So it's the end. So you fall in this island, and then immediately there is a ring on the map. If you're not inside that ring, well, I thought at first there was like a blue like shield that's closing in to that white ring. If you're not inside that ring, you'll take damage.
Uh-huh.
And the first like
Yeah, so the more you get shot, the closer you come to dying. Okay, yeah.
But there's like you gotta make it all over the place. Painful. But like yeah, the map just keeps constricting and constricting. Like stuck to 100 people and really done one. I have not won a match. I have not won a match fully yet. I've come in second twice. And the thing is, there's a little message that pops up in the rinse. It's like winner chicken dinner and stuff. I haven't had a chicken dinner yet.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it was like there's a lot of strategy where people just like hide in buildings, so like people run into buildings. And, like, oh fuck, I was just hiding there. Because like I had like a really bad like run last week, where it's just like everybody got dropped. Like I couldn't kill anybody. Like you still get points and stuff. There's like a point system like outside the match.
Yeah.
It's like I never want a fist fight. Sometimes if you hit the ground, there's a guy near you, and it's like you have to like run and try to find a gun, or just like duke it out with the guy next to you. So like I never want a fist fight. Everyone always beat me. Everyone always getting the drop on me. It's like just pop out of nowhere. It's getting really frustrated. And I finally had a match where just like everything was going my way. So, like I hit the ground, and like I was right next to a guy. He's like going for the same building I was. Like, oh fuck, this fight and all this wounds. Like I did a jumping punch, hit the guy in the head, and down there was a headshot, and killed him immediately.
Nice.
We still got some punches in, so I had to heal up. And then like I ended up like a shotgun fight with some other guy. He like ran out of bullets. Like and I like ran over and just shot him and put all his stuff off. Also, you get there's a limit to what you can hold. You gotta like find my backpacks and shit.
Oh, okay.
There's also helmets. There's like level helmets like somewhat bulletproof, which is a bicycle helmet, and then you get like a actual like army helmet, and then you get like this weird like builder's face mask thing that's like an entire encapsulating helmet.
Okay.
You get ballistic masks, with the vests, the bulletproof vests and things like that. And the vests I have to carry myself. It's like it's sort of a limit to what you can carry. Like sometimes like I get like almost 200 rounds ammo. It's like you'll never use more than like 60 rounds of ammo, unless you're really going around killing people.
Right. Yeah, this sounds like a game that doesn't. Yeah, it's not a run and gun type game.
No, it's like a lot of people like hiding and stuff. And like, if you like hide, you can like really you can hear people like walking around and shit. Like it's really easy to do that. Turn up the volume. And, like it's just cool. It's like people running around in grass. You can hear them. If you're in a building and someone's upstairs, you can really hear them if they're walking around. So you just like stay downstairs. So it's hard to hear people downstairs.
Yeah.
From upstairs, so if you hear somebody upstairs, you just kind of camp out, wait for them to come downstairs. But yeah, so I had this shotgun a guy, and I was outside the circle. The thing was a restriction yet, so I went and found a car. Cars always on the road, on the main roads.
Uh-huh.
So it's always a gamble because the roads are usually in valleys and stuff, so you never know if someone's trying to pick you off on like a hill, camped up on the hill with a rifle.
Huh.
There's also people just camp out cars, which is a method. Also, like cars always spawn facing east, and like I used that a couple times. Or get in the car, it's like a fully covered car. I park it on the side of the road facing east. And I jump into like one of the other seats. So if you weren't looking for it, you wouldn't know I was inside the car. And then when I saw something coming near, I'd pop out and shoot him and just stay back in the car. Anyways, I had this one match, shotgun that one guy, get a car, and I drive to a circle. I drive to the center. There's like, it always recenters when it constricts, creates a new center. But it's not. It's never the same center. It's always the center within the previous center. So it'll jump around a lot.
Huh.
It'll always be within that white circle. But it's not guaranteed to be that. So I found like a field that was like on a hill. I parked my car and I ran away from it. And I started just crawling around the field. It's really hard to see people in the field.
Yeah.
And so I found a guy, and this guy driving a car, and he gets out of the car and he's like across the way on another hill. So I sniped him, and like he's just looking around. And as soon as you start getting shot from a distance, you just look around and you don't see anything. And then you just like waiting to die.
Yeah.
So whenever you get the drop on somebody, you get the drop. And then like so I killed him, and I laid you back down with you. And like I started crawling, and the center constrict again, and so I started crawling towards the outer edge of the next circle. I got inside there. And then I heard a guy just running around. And like I turn around, and here goes the guy, but I'm still crouching down, so he didn't know where I'm still laying down, he didn't know I'm there. Just turn around and shoot him to death. It's like, hey, more ammo! And then like it constricted, it just keeps constricting. I'm crawling the whole way to the new circles. So like, next time, I see other people like run around getting shot to death while I'm just crawling and no one's seeing me. And it gets down to like the last five, and like I killed one more guy, and then the last guy killed me. Last guy killed me. It was a really cool. I didn't win, but it was a really cool match. I killed a lot of people.
Huh.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like almost a throwback.
Oh,
Yeah. To earlier games.
I mean, there's a lot of systems in here, but there's a lot of just chance. Because like none of all the items spawn randomly.
Uh-huh.
So you're never guaranteed the same stuff in the same place. But there's kind of a general like high value stuff. It takes place on some mysterious Russian island. It's like all this Russian dilapidated Russian equipment and stuff. And then there's all these fucking random guns all over the place. But there's some like the power plant. It'll generally be like a lot of cool stuff there. It won't be the same cool stuff every time, but generally will stuff like that. So whenever the plane flies over that, because the plane always randomly flies in a different spot every time the map does.
Yeah.
Randomly, what happens, and it's huge map. So like things pretty fast. It's like there's a lot of times the final, it's like the final thing will be on this island with military bases. There's only two bridges that get to the island. So there's people that just camp that bridge out. And there's people good enough that can snipe you in your car trying to drive across the bridge.
Oh, okay. That's pretty good.
Yeah. The thing I found out recently is Wolf car tires. You share the car tires on the car. I think it's still an early access. They've added things. They've added like 8 guns since the game started. They've added like 4 different vehicles. Soon they're gonna add mantles and these guys like hop over shit.
Huh.
Right now it's like the only thing you can like jump over is if it's like waist high. Any higher than that, there's no way you can jump over.
Oh, okay. I see. That's
Makes it all weird and kind of weird.
yeah.
I'm just trying to get over this fence. No, you all the way around. Also, like, it gets really janky too, especially with 100 people on the server.
Yeah, it sounds like
So whenever like the connection starts getting weird, someone's nearby. It's almost a giveaway.
the Matrix has a fault.
Like, oh, like, that thing kind of skipped beats and fuck somebody. Like, oh shit, yeah, shot that. That's usually like how I engage everything. Is like if I'm in a building or near a building, it's fuck shotgun. You can usually almost no matter what they have armor wise, kill anybody with well placed like at least 2 rounds with a well placed shotgun.
Right.
Whereas with like a rifle, it's easier to miss something.
Yeah, I'll probably see it and lose interest quickly.
Yeah, because that's always what happens. Like most of the games I play, the thing is that you like try to find a spot where it's like okay, I'm gonna land a spot where no one else is landing. There's gonna be enough building around
Right.
and you get like everything you want. I got the automatic shotgun, I got the rifle, I got an AVX scope. Like, here we go. I'm like walk around the corner, someone shoots you dead. Like nothing. Like, you get nothing out of that match. And you have to like start another. There's like whole like it takes almost like 5 minutes to start the new match. It's like it has to gather together 100 people. So luckily it's pretty popular game. Still, it's like you lose a match like right at the beginning. It's like 5 minutes for a match.
Huh.
And there'll be sometimes like you'll get like one kill and it's like, well, that was a good match. I got the first match I ever played. I got second place, and mostly all I did was crawl like across fields to the center every time. Like I said, it's hard to compete from a distance. I started playing the game before, so I didn't engage anybody. No one was engaging me, so and a lot of times you just start hiding in the whole game.
Huh.
But then the circle gets so small for you, you reach like the outside tree.
Well, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, so it's player own battleground. Some people say short PUBG.
Ask my son if he's ever heard of that.
It'll be coming out on Xbox soon. Like a
Yeah.
console exclusive. Xbox. And like I said, it's still early access.
Yeah.
Steam sales going on right now.
Pick up some more.
Yeah, Shadow Mordor special edition, Ultimate Edition, $4. That was a really good game.
Yeah, I've heard good things about that.
I never finished it though. I just like really played it one. It was a good game though. Not new ones like that.
What's the next one?
Oh, that's just another Shadow movie. Standing up on the main system. A lot of things. Like before you go to battle, it's almost like it's almost like an RTS. All these things you can mess around with. I'm going to deploy these troops here and here and here, and I'm going to break down this castle this way. What was the city thing? There's just a lot of shit you can choose to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I forget where you showed me some things on it. Well, you're talking about Masters of Doom. You said you finished that.
That book kind of ends weird because it was written years ago or something. So it ends on Don Comic like making rockets.
Uh-huh.
So like they didn't like in the book they didn't finish D3 yet.
Oh, okay.
They didn't get the raid and all that stuff. Virtual reality and all that. So it's kind of weird. All the stuff further.
Oh, okay.
John Romero now lives in Ireland. He's there. He's like, hey, it's great here. Now they're on like some community for making video games.
Is he still doing the Oculus thing?
No, that's Conlan.
Oh, Romero. This guy with the long hair, right? Romero. Okay. Yeah, and Carmack's the genius programmer with the real sick political philosophies.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Try to keep him straight.
Exactly.
Oh, he's a libertarian nutcase.
Okay, I didn't know if it, well, because Palmer Luckey, he recently got like basically fired from
No, I'm talking about John Carmack's. He's a what do you call that? What's the guy who he follows? Shit, the MIT economist, Soul or whatever. Yeah, he's like one of these. Yeah, basically just everyone dies, but the rich people. Yeah.
I mean, you get that in the book. A lot of the problems that Ed were created by him, because he just like, well, if I make all these people compete against each other, we'll get better results. They kind of did, and everybody was hating each other.
Yeah, then it's a society based on hate.
Yeah. A lot of interesting people I ran through there, especially. I almost want to say a book on. So there's a guy. His real name is American Pete.
I've heard that before.
His name has been on video games.
Yeah.
But yeah, his like fucking like the segment they have on him, it's like very strange. He was like he's like a it's like Carmack got like a Ferrari faster, and he couldn't find anybody who like worked on a Ferrari.
He was the guy. Carmack liked to put turbochargers on his Ferraris, and then
So he found somebody to put turbo things in his cars. So like one guy was working on a car was American Pete. He was a mechanic. I don't think he ever finished high school.
yeah.
He programmed a lot of things for but one of the reasons he did that is like one day some mother fell in love with some guy and they all ran away. This one became a woman. He sold the house and all the stuff and they ran away to Mexico so he did a sex thing or something like that.
Okay.
And so he came home one day and everything was gone. The house sold, the condo was still there, so he just next day picked up all that stuff, got a job, and lived on his own.
Did the guy ever get a sex change operation?
I don't know.
His father-in-law.
That's why you need a whole book for its fucking American. And then he ends up becoming. Then John Carmack likes him. He ends up becoming a level designer.
Yeah.
Works on like D2 and plays and stuff like that. Even that might have to fall apart too. Carmack expects results. So the thing with like Romero too, that he was kind of like a rock star to his movies, that he was getting preoccupied with like surrounding stuff with the game. He wasn't necessarily working on the game on the game. Oh, you're not producing enough. You're fired. A lot of sad firings, especially like how they start with like the building games in this fucking boathouse in Louisiana.
Yeah.
Spare time to work for another company making games for like this magazine. That make small games and like in their spare time stealing computers from this company and then bring them back in the daytime and everything is gone.
Well, they're the guys who made the magazine things where you program that into your computer and it do stuff.
No, they just had like it was a magazine, but I think it had like discs in it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it was like they built the game design. Then they were able to get away from that. They went to Conlan, Minnesota. Oh, it's cold places.
Yeah. One of the cold places.
I want to say because that's where they met Raven Software. They worked with places. They made a lot of games that were very like.
Mm-hmm.
They made a lot of cool shooters. As successful. Now they're just doing like they're working on Call of Duty. They're not the same company they used to be. Now they're just kind of working on Call of Duty maps.
Oh. Okay.
But they made the Hexen games were the first one they made. It was based on
Okay.
Like it's,
Heard of those. Yeah.
they made the Return to Castle Wolfenstein game. Um, not the recent one.
Yeah, I remember that one.
They made the Star Trek Forces the Star Trek shooter.
Oh, yeah, yeah, because it was set in the Voyager universe.
Yeah, and there's like they ran into like one of the alternate universe, and like it has like the Soul to the World logo and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, the mirror universe.
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember that game. I actually that was a fun game.
yeah. Also made the Soldier of Fortune game.
I don't remember those as much.
They're just like super violent a lot of times. You could like blow limbs off specifically, shot someone in the stomach, and testicles pop out and stuff.
Oh, okay.
I think the last big game they did was Singularity. Cool kind of Bioshock game. Time travel stuff.
Familiar. Yeah,
It was a real cool game. But
it's tough sometimes.
yeah, it's a really interesting game, especially about the
Yeah, they would seem like an odd bunch.
and then the whole thing got really high on selling. Kind of just like sad. It's just like, here's all the money you need to make a video game. Oh, fuck it up.
Well, what game did they make with them?
Made several. They all kind of just didn't work out. The whole thing about them is like design first. It's all about like the game design. It was all about like John Carmack didn't really like make a game. He just kind of made the engine to make it.
Yeah.
So it's all about like tech. Start from tech and then make the game from there. He's all like, how you design the game, make the game from tech and so they came out with some. One of their guys, the first game that came out was called Dominion. It was a real-time strategy game. It came out the same day as StarCraft.
Oh, okay. No stiff competition there.
Yeah. And then John Romero was working on a game called Daikatana. And like they really like they would have gotten ahead and out did advertising for it. They took out these big ads in game magazines with big red splash with like some Japanese lettering. Like this is Daikatana, down below it says John Connor, John Romero's gonna produce it.
Oh,
Like
okay.
just really like putting it out there as like, yeah, we're awesome. We're gonna like make the awesome thing ever. It's like blow your fucking mind. And then like they were making on the Quake One engine, but the Romero one making on the Quake Two engine. So they waited around until Carmack got that editor computer from Quake One to Quake Two engine. But then like I guess between the time like Carmack's thinking of how to develop a 3D engine completely changed. So formatting from the Quake One engine to the Quake Two engine is pretty much impossible.
Just had to start over from the beginning.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So yeah, the game finally came out and it was a piece of shit. It cost like millions of dollars. Lost their ass.
Huh.
And then they had one game that like got some decent credit. And then along the time they acquired another company. I think it was like Whiplash. I don't know. It was I can't remember who it was. It was a famous guy in the game industry. I guess he was more respected. And he had a studio in Austin. They got like kind of bought by Alliance Thorn. They weren't necessarily like a part of that group that were everything fucked up.
Yeah.
So they went on to create Deus Ex. So it's a pretty, it's one of the best games of all time, man.
Yeah.
And a revolutionary kind of shooter. Unless you played System Shock. That was one of my first kind of like
Yeah.
And at some point, they shuttered all those studios except for I Am Still Mocking.
Huh. Yeah, it's always seemed like I said, I don't understand anything about computers or technology or programming, but
I mean, the book really doesn't give you that.
no, I've always been interested in the it's like it seems like a lot of people come and go in that business, and hundreds of millions of dollars get spent and nothing happens, and it's like, well,
Well,
nobody's
it's not that much. But
well, but today it is. They spent hundred tens of millions of dollars on things that never happened, and
yeah.
well, it's always interesting, like why did no one go to jail and what went wrong and who bombed that? And,
I don't know. Programming's still like one of those weird jobs where like you're expected to put in like 100 hours.
yeah, that makes people
Fucking
insane.
insane. I mean, you get paid a lot, or
You're
sometimes you don't.
not getting paid enough, no matter what it is. If you're doing 100 hours a week, you're not
Yeah,
getting
that's why a lot of people like
paid. Yeah.
I remember one guy had a gas leak to make I don't think it's first or something like that. Yeah, gas leak to make games like, hey, we're gonna have 8 hour work weeks. We're gonna have 40-hour work weeks. It's final.
Yeah. Well, what company was it? Hewlett Packard, or I don't want to name a company and say this happened, but it was one of the big companies where they made it mandatory, like they put computer controlled timers, and they're like, "Hey, the lights go off at 8 p.m." because they had someone fucking die because the guy worked himself to death. And this was in America. This wasn't some Chinese, Japanese type work and then go jump off the top of a building because I got one thing wrong. This was in America. Some guy worked himself to death. And the CEO, I think it was Hewlett Packard. The CEO was so upset. He's like, he put a master thing on. It's like, don't be in the middle of doing something. Save everything because at 8 o'clock the power goes off. Because it was the only way they could stop their software engineers from doing what you're saying. Just like we're going to work, more hours in the week than there are hours in the week. And they were having big error problems as a result of people working insane hours because they didn't know, they're just out of their minds. Because what's the average age of people that do that? It's 20s, right? Early 20s, mid 20s. Yeah, because you can't really sustain that kind of workload. Um, and then have you seen? Speaking of, I know this is unrelated but funny fictional. Have you seen the latest Silicon Valley season? Fourth season, yeah, it's pretty funny. Again, it changes again. It's amazing how that show. It's like defeat, victory, defeat, victory.
Well, it's like the show ends with just making a billionaire. So you find a ways to that.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's not untrue. Like that's how that show works. Try to be innovative company and you your product and sell out.
Yeah.
Sometimes they make something that you're trying to make for the past 10 years and they sell $1 billion worth.
I think it's an interesting show. I mean, I like all the actors on it. Whoever casted this group really did a good job because they're all. I guess T.J. Miller's leaving this season.
Yeah, which makes sense.
So, yeah, he.
Kind of useless.
Well, they weren't happy. They wanted him to stay, but he has so many movie commitments because he's always the sidekick now in all these different movies. So he was just done with it. But yeah, he's good. The main guy, that Thomas Middlevich is really good. And then I mean, all of them are good. The Pakistan, yeah, yeah. It was Judd Apatow produced it. Yeah, that's the one where he's gonna marry an American girl and she goes into a coma.
Yeah.
It's like really happened.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Oh, okay.
But they did an interview with
Oh, okay. I'll have to listen to that.
yeah,
And then the guy who plays the Satanist dude. Yeah, what's the character's name? He has a weird name. It sounds like a name from. Yeah, it sounds like a name from the Knights of the Round Table or something. I actually I actually know a guy he's not a computer programmer, but he's very similar to that guy. Like, oh, you're miserable. I'm happy that know someone like that. I don't think he's a Satanist yet, or at least he hasn't proclaimed it. Yeah, yeah, he screams in German in his sleep, and there's always he talks about being on the streets and being in prison, and it's like there's this whole weird backstory that never comes up. Yeah, it was something. He's always saying something where everyone's like, "What the fuck?" What does Guilfoyle call him? Retarded Frankenstein. Always got something awful to say. And then, well, of course, then there's the guy Spaghetti. That guy's a good actor. He was Mark Maron's assistant. That's the only other thing I know him from. Yeah. And then the Chinese guy, Li Chang or whatever. I mean, there's everyone on that show is good. There's no one who I'm like, oh, I don't want to see this fucker again. Oh yeah. I always like the guy who plays he's the CEO that screwed the guy from Hooli out of his job. Because me and Stacy were watching it because Stacy watches it with me and she actually likes it. And she's like, "What is it with that guy?" Because they were putting him in the basement. And I said, "Oh, he's the guy. He's like from Illinois or something. He always seems like a nice guy, but always fucks you over in the end. He fucked these guys over when they made Pied Piper into some kind of storage unit. He just ran with the idea to Hooli. And he's like, "Really? He just seems like a dork." I said, "No, no, he'll fuck this guy over." And then like 2 episodes later, he's like, "See." Yeah, something like that. Oh, does he? Okay. I'll have to check that out. I have so many podcasts to listen to now. Um, but yeah, that's a funny. Oh, that's the ladies wrestling network from the 70s, 80s. And Mark Maron's in that. What do you think of it? I haven't watched one yet. Uh huh. Oh, okay. Tell a story. Yeah. Frizzy hair. So, what was the thing about Glow? What was the importance of it? It was just because they wanted a women's wrestling network, or did people think they could make money? Well, I just wanted to, I mean, because I vaguely know what this is, but I always wondered, it's like, why did they do this? Because was this like supposed to... Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Okay.
show at that hotel, like the bowling inside.
Okay.
So the guy bankroll owned the hotel, and there was like this guy who was really enthusiastic about it, and then that guy was kind of like the director, who'd been a director of some note, and that's basically who Mark Maron was.
Okay.
And then so they destroyed it. It's not really too crazy. It's WWE stuff. Actually, some of the shit was really fucking crazy. They do a scene in the show, in the Netflix show, where it's so there's two girls, you know, and they were really great wrestlers. They're basically like improv comics, and so they had a lot of gimmicks to do.
Okay.
And one of the first things they wrestled as is that they're housewives. They're just like these old housewives about these women scantily clad. That was like their gimmick for a while. They also wrestled basically as Klansmen. They were just like in overalls with bags on their head with eyes cut out of it.
And this was a Saturday morning show, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
But in the Netflix show, they basically have them as being Klansmen, and they're wrestling like these
Oh, okay. I see what the hook is. Okay. I thought it was two Klansmen wrestling each other. I was like, oh, okay. With black ladies, it makes sense.
Yeah. There's one fucking crazy fucking documentary where they were dressed up as Nazis and had Nazi flags and marched to the ring and Nazi regalia and shit like that. That is fucking crazy.
You wouldn't do that now.
No. I mean, it was perfectly, you could do that at the time. I mean, like, fucking, they had Nazis and, Blues Brothers and shit. Like, you could get away with it at that time. It was seen as as specifically a satire, and people who would get offended by it probably weren't watching it. So,
Yeah, they weren't going for this kind of entertainment.
they also had a weird demographic. It was like young girls really liked it, and but they also had like this really devoted contingent of like frat boys and college boys.
Oh, okay.
Sort of enjoyed it for its cheesy. There's also a great line in the Netflix show. It's Mark Maron, and they're trying to sell it to television guys. They're trying to spot. And then it's like it's handy-clad women. It's like wrestling. And it's like big and bold, or whatever. It's like it's all you can watch with your family.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. It's like, when did that angle come into it? Where?
Oh yeah, just like in that, like the show, like in the documentary, just like show just things kind of fell into place. They had their moment, kind of in the way that all of a sudden. Apparently, the rumor was like the guy who was bankrolling everything, like to play around with the talent.
Ah,
Like,
yeah. You don't shit where you sleep.
So apparently, he said like, "Here the show goes where I go."
Oh, I see. Okay, that's probably a.
And nobody else came like pick it up.
Huh. Because I vaguely remember that, but see, I never got into the wrestling stuff. So, but I remember there was like, oh, there's big booed women.
I mean, they're all. I mean, there's a couple big, but actually, like the star of the league was I can't remember something. Her name was Mount something. Like he was like Clark Sonoma. He like throw these little girls around the free throw.
Yeah.
And she was actually like an Olympic shot putter.
Oh, I see.
There's the one lady, like she's a fucking character. Her character is Hilda the Hun. And
Okay.
she's been wrestling for like a really long time. There's something like where she can't wrestle men through like one of her like sporting organization that wasn't allowed. So she was allowed to wrestle a bear. Psycho commercial there. But this show popped up, and they go to the injury section. They're the fucking horrendous injury in the show. Yeah, like some bad things happen. I was like all the older ladies and all the bigger ladies. Like a lot of bad things happen to ladies.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, this is one like she had a compound fracture of the elbow.
Nice.
Uh,
It takes surgery to get that right again.
yeah, you can see her fucking elbow popping out of her arm. It's like weird. It's not like it wasn't like blood or anything. It's like, oh yeah, there's your elbow.
Yep, there it is. It's white.
Like, the ligament popped up. The ligament popped up. And she just picks it up, like kind of holds on to it, like in the ring. Like that was fucked up.
Yeah, that's well. All the stories of because I remember when Opie and Jim, maybe it was Opie and Sam. I don't know. I tried to give that a chance, but because like Sam Roberts is really into uh he was really into the professional wrestling, made the men's mainly. Yeah, you get those guys in their 50s, like some of them, like the people I remember from the 80s and 90s, like some of them turned out okay, but a lot of those guys are just jacked up on painkillers or dead because they literally, it's like everyone's like, oh, that's fake. It's like, well, yeah, but in the theatrical presentation, you can get really fucked up. Those guys, some of those guys are just torn to shreds. But yeah, I remember they interviewed a few of those guys, and yeah, they weren't doing.
Well, looking for like everybody's still alive so far.
Yeah. But how many of them are whacked up on painkillers? And
I don't know.
well, I mean, they didn't have 20 years of getting the shit beat out of them either.
Well, that's the thing with the Silver Hun. It's like when she finally like hit big, she got famous. She was 35.
Right.
She kept that ball rolling.
Yeah.
And like, so eventually, it was like someone took her out. It was like she got really fucked up. Yeah, a couple of toes.
Oh, okay.
And then she kind of like balanced.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they show her she like on a scooter and stuff. Like, she's a large lady. Like she still like works out and stuff. Like goes to the pool, and she doesn't worry about balance. And
yeah.
She's knocked out. Like I can still wrestle from my knees. Like I still fuck you up. So into that character. She's like 60.
Yeah. Yeah, it's yeah, losing the toes is no joke. That's the most common injury you have with a forklift. And I know a lot of people that work at the auto industry that have a few toes missing. Yeah, you lose your big toe, you're fucked. You're going to be listing to whatever direction that foot lost a toe for the rest of your life, because you're going to walk too far to the right or too far to the left, because it just amputates your toes. I mean, the forklift does it for you. They just sew the wound closed. Once your bone gets pulverized, there's nothing left.
And then there was a weird. They didn't like elaborate on. It was like some weird underground, like private wrestling video thing.
Okay.
Where it's like it's not porn. You know someone's jerking off.
Yeah. It's not quite full penny porn, but somebody's got some kind of fetish.
Basically, it was like guys from overseas and maybe guys who maybe grew up with this, were now like just rich poor people, like commission these videos and like she'll like dress up as her wing persona and like wrestle a robber like coming into her house. What the fuck? And then like here's $5,000, make this video.
If I had money like that, I could so imagine spending. I mean, I don't know if the things I would do would be any better. There'd be a lot of explosions in the desert, like crazy cars, but yeah. Well, speaking of weird sex fetish stuff, that I watched Tosh tonight because it was on my DVR, and I just saw something that was so horrible. It was like, it definitely confirmed that the fall of Rome is near, because they had this, I forget what it was. It was like 7 perfect princesses, or it was something on YouTube where it was like preteen girls just like misbehaving, or you know, they would be like laying in bed with a tiara and they'd be like, get up, it's time for school. I don't want to, you know. And then they'd put whipped cream on their waffles and then the girls would lick it off. And these are all like fucking 12, 9, you know, girls in that age bracket. And like, here's how many views this has. If you add it all up, it was like 12 billion. And it's like, there's no way it's a bunch of other little girls watching this shit. It's like, this is how fucked up people are now. And this is on YouTube. This isn't like something like, there is no like nudity or pornography to it, but it's like kiddie porn. I mean, if there's that many people watching it or viewing it over and over again, you know what it is. And it's like, oh yeah, there's just, I don't get people in their weird sex stuff.
But yeah, I really like the Netflix show. Very like complicated characters going on. Like star of the show is Allison Brie. Like she really puts herself in pretty fucked up situations. It's kind of whole series like that.
So this doesn't just this series just isn't about the show, it's about their lives too. And
Yeah. I mean, like the last episode is them doing their first show.
oh, okay. So this is really, the whole thing is about what it's like to be this kind of entertainer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Coming together. There's like a good of there's a part. There's a lady. She's like a star of the show, and she was like a soap opera actress, and then she had a kid, and she kind of like went away. And like her character right now is soap opera anyway, and so she's just kind of been out of work for a while. So they get her to come in, and she's the star of the show, but she's kind of reluctant to necessarily understand this.
Yeah.
And there's another lady because it's kind of like she's like the Pick Simone idea. She takes her little lessons that are kind of showed off. Like there's one guy I can't remember his name. He comes in on a motorcycle and he's kind of like he's the all-American hero. And this other guy comes in like he's Mr. Monopoly. I was like he closed down the factory that he worked at. Like all this other stuff. And he has this revelation telling all these ridiculous storylines that we have for the rest of the match. It's like this is soap opera. This is soap opera. I understand this.
Yeah, this is all synthesized drama.
Like all the training when they were out like the clock and all that stuff, how to sell all the things. How sometimes the person the move is getting done to is less hated than the person doing the move.
Oh, okay. I never really explored those things.
Oh yeah, it's like basically I don't know, it's different stuff. Like, whenever a guy does a move, it's like and the move. It's not like a guy actually picking up the other guy and throwing him around. It's like no, like it's like on three, like you jump and then I'll lift you up at the same time so you do this like gigantic body slam or something.
What do you mean, like the pile driver where you take someone's head and slam it into the ground and put their neck at a 90-degree angle? That's not real?
No, that's actually you have to do that correctly. They actually don't allow that anymore.
Oh, because it's a good way to fuck somebody up if you do it wrong.
That happened to Stone Cold Steve Austin. He broke his neck. He got that
Oh, yeah.
Owen Hart hit it to him. He like hit incorrectly. So what you're supposed to do is like basically supposed to put the guy's head like on the top of your meat of your thighs, and then you just drop to your ass.
Yeah.
And then like all the impact is on you. It's like the thighs, your ass, you take the impact, and the guy's just above the ground.
Right.
No, and he actually like put Stone Cold Steve Austin's head like underneath his legs and slammed his head in the ground for real.
Yeah, off a fucking turnbuckle.
No, on the ground.
On the ground, okay.
On the fucking ground, and broke his neck.
Yeah.
And so then he was out for like 6 months or whatever. He was debilitated. It was actually in that time where actually like solidified his character.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't wrestling, but he could go out there and like kind of do the acting of himself. It all became this him versus the corporation and stuff like that. He became like this everyman and stuff like that. coming out with 2 beers, like $6 deal. Instagram and stuff like that. And that's where they really built that whole persona, like that time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they don't allow that anymore. I mean, they let the Undertaker do the tombstone pile driver because that's a safer move.
Right.
They don't allow chair shots to the head anymore.
Oh, that's too bad. They still do the cage matches with the whips.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
I'm
yeah.
not sure about the whip. They still do cage match.
Oh, they had the whip match. I remember that in the 80s. Like it was because it was Roddy Piper and some other guy, and they'd lower the cage over, and they had fucking whips. But well, they were more like flails than the actual, like the ones you deploy, because those will rip your skin apart. Okay, so they
big sticks that kind of look like swords, but they sound really loud. You hit somebody with them.
Yeah, they're like bamboo or something. Yeah, they're probably cut too, so they like twack together. Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like. Okay.
Also, like Mark, he interviewed Mark was really good. I mean, he's pretty much playing an exaggerated version of himself.
Yeah. All right. Well, Glow, check it out. Well, I think that's about it for this week. This is our impromptu podcast. We made it 2 hours. 2 hours of solid entertainment and information that people can take home and contemplate and listen to. So I think that's about it. That's all I have. Well, so this week's the American Food Factory podcast is Nathan.